Today we are meeting on a day which is the 219th birthday of Kurikos Ilos Chavara. It's on this day in 1805 Chavara was born. It was just the beginning of the 19th century. Father, in one way, the most unsuitable person to stand here and speak today. And in another way, I think I am suitable. I will tell you why. But first, let me say why I am not really suitable. I am not a religious person. So that is why, in a way, maybe I am not qualified to stand here and speak today. But Father Mannaratthara, I believe in a way I am suitable because I believe in human agency. I believe in great men who stood up and questioned the society around them, who stood up and worked to change that, who did not tolerate injustice, who did not tolerate oppression, who did not tolerate inequality. I believe in that. I believe in that kind of a work. And that is the reason why I came here and I am standing before you to celebrate the life of Father Chavara. I have been interacting with Father Mannaratthara for some time now. This is not the first time I am here in this particular hall. And once Father gave me a wonderful book on Chavara. I was astonished. I was really astonished. Is it possible for a person in just about 65, 66 years to do the kind of work that Chavara had done? Is it possible? It wasn't easy. And the society then in which Father Chavara was working was very hostile to whatever he thought, whatever he contemplated, whatever he wanted to do. That is why I thought I should come here. Even in one way, I am not really suitable. That I should come here and pay my respects with folded hands to a great person like Chavara. It is difficult for most of you to even imagine the kind of circumstances that were a reality then in the early 19th century. Today, a lot of people tell you a lot of things. Recently, I heard somebody saying that caste was a colonial construction. It wasn't there before. I think some people came from abroad and ruled us, and just to divide us, they created caste. This is the kind of things that people are saying today about what were the conditions in early 19th century, mid 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. I mean, we don't have to look so far behind. I will give you some of the instances. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had very specifically noted in some of his writings. Please follow this carefully. He said, and it is a fact, that in Maharashtra, an untouchable was required to wear a black thread either in his neck or on his wrist for purposes of ready identification. In Gujarat, the untouchables were compelled to wear a horn as their distinguishing mark. In the Punjab, a sweeper was required while walking through streets in towns to carry a broom in his hand or under his armpit as a mark of his being a scavenger. In Bombay, the untouchables were not permitted to wear clean or untorn clothes. In fact, the shopkeepers took the precaution to see that before cloth was sold to these untouchables, they were torn and soiled, the cloth. In Malabar, the untouchables were not allowed to build houses above 1 story and not allowed to cremate their dead. The untouchables in Malabar were not permitted to carry umbrellas, to wear shoes or golden ornaments, to milk cows, or even to use the ordinary language of the country. In South India, untouchables were expressly forbidden to cover the upper part of their body above the waist, and in the case of women of the untouchables, they were compelled to go with the upper part of their bodies quite bare. In Bombay Presidency, so high a caste as that of sonas, that is goldsmiths, was forbidden to wear their dhotis with folds and prohibited to use namaskar as the word of greeting. They were not everybody was allowed to say namaskar. Under the Maratha rule, anyone other than a Brahmin uttering a Veda mantra was liable to have his tongue cut off, and as a matter of fact, the tongues of several sonars were actually cut off by the order of the Peshwa for their daring to utter the Vedas contrary to laws. In the city of Pune, those days Pune, the untouchables were not allowed to enter the city after 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock, because that is the time when the shadows fall long. And even the shadow of an untouchable was polluting people, and the Savarnas, the high caste people, if the untouchable's shadow fell on them, they could not eat unless they took bath, a ritual bath. This was the social condition of India in the early 19th century, mid-19th century, late 19th century, and early 20th century, when people like Chavara Achan was working. Can you imagine this? Can you even imagine this? And there were huge debates going on in the country, in several parts of the country, those days. And there were very prominent Indians who were saying that if you educate women, that will result in women developing loose morals. And very important, very respectable people have written about it. They were on record saying this. It is not a hush-hush matter. Educating lower castes, educating women will enfeeble the country. It will lead to moral collapse of the country. The national spirit will weaken. Women will not listen to men, and therefore create a huge chaos in the institution of family. This was argued. This was fought for. This was the kind of dharma. This was the kind of ideology that was being propagated and upheld during the years when people like Chavarachan was working. So when you know that people like Chavarachan were working under such circumstances, whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe in some supernatural power or not, you will automatically develop a huge veneration for such people. What did they want to achieve? They wanted to achieve equality. They wanted to achieve human dignity. They wanted to achieve parity between men and women. They wanted to achieve a condition where people are not humiliated because of their birth. People are not barred from educating themselves because of their birth. That is what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to give them dignity. they wanted themselves to treat or feel that they were also human. They wanted to achieve a condition that every person in this society, in this Indian society, treats everyone else as a human and as an equal. Father, when I think about this, what are the points in which we operate as individuals? We go to places of worship, we go to places of learning, and we go to public places, and we are in our private places, that is homes. In home, there's a man and a wife. What should be the relationship between a man and a wife? What happens if the wife dies to the man? And what happens to the woman if the man dies? What happens to the wife if the husband dies? What happens to the husband when the wife dies? What happens to their children? Whom can they marry? How do they live? How do they die? How are they cremated? Where are they cremated? What do their children do? If you don't have children, whom can you adopt? What would be the inheritance? Will a widow have life after her husband's death? Or will she have to go on to the funeral pyre of the husband and offer herself to the fire? What is the age for a girl to be married? What is the age of consent? These are all battles. What we find today in society has not just come like that. It was not a given thing. You know, Father, I remember very well, there was a huge debate that raged in the country, especially the western part of the country, with big stalwarts pitching in. When there was a proposal sometime in the 1880s, for raising the age of consent for marriage by a girl. You know what was the debate about? At that time, the age of consent was 8 years. 8 years was the age of consent. And there was a proposal that it should be increased. The age of consent to be increased to 9 years. And there was, all hell broke loose. People said it cannot be. And those days, the marriage of girls were usually performed between 1 year of age and 10 years of age. Do you know? We had that. Advocates up. And whom can you marry? You just can't marry anybody. You have to, of course, marry within your caste. And suppose if you marry somebody outside your caste, what happens if the male is from an upper caste and the female is from the lower caste? That is one, which is called Anuloma Vivaha. There is another one where the female is from an upper caste and the male is from a lower caste, which is called Pratiloma Vivaha. And the progeny, the children of the Pratiloma Vivaha, where the male is from a lower caste, I'm not talking about the untouchable class, that's the fifth one. But within the four, the so-called Chatur Varna, Varnashrama Dharma, I'm talking about those four. We'll come to the fifth one later. If 1, 2, 3, 4, if the male is 1 and the female is 3 or 4, it's all right. To some extent. Not allowed. I mean, not really happy about it, but okay. But if the female is from 1 or 2 or 3 and the male is from 2 or 3 or 4, then it's called Pratiloma Vivaha and it is conned upon. It is prohibited in case it happens. And these two were thrown out of the society, and the progeny, the children of that, were considered as Chandas, who are untouchables. And our great smritis, which people talk about, Manusmriti, Parashara Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, etc., the big Sanskrit, thick texts, they tell you that if you do that Pratiloma Vivaha, in the next Janma, you will be born as a pig or a cat or a dog or some such an animal. They said this. That was the kind of society that we had. That was the kind of conditions that existed in the 18th century, as late as the early 20th century. This is about the domestic thing. I won't go into much details, but broadly you can understand the kind of unequal situation, the kind of, the division is not horizontal, the division was vertical. One at the top and then next, then next, then next, then next. It is not, there are four, here is one, equal. No, it's not that. It is a vertical division from top to bottom, and you had, it is not anything modern. You had something in the great Rigveda itself, in the Purusha Sukta, which told the society that the primordial being, Brahmano Mukhamasitu, Brahmano Asya Mukhamasitu, Bahu Rajanya Krita. I'll explain the meaning. Uru Yadasya Tadvaisyaha Padabhyam Sudro Ajayata. The Brahmin came from the mouth of that primordial person. The Kshatriya came from the hands, the shoulder. The Vaishya came from the thighs, and the Shudra came from the feet. That was the hierarchy. So, the top, and then the second, and the third, and the fourth. It's clear. And some people try to justify, even today, some people make an attempt to justify, after all, this is division of labor. They try to give us a spin. Well, if it is division of labor, how can division of labor be permanent? By birth, you can't get out of it. And then comes, what is your position at home? What is your position at place of worship? What is your place at the place of learning? And what is your place on the streets? I read out to you what are the places on the streets. That a place like Pune, the gates were closed to these people, so-called untouchables, between 9 and 3 during the day, because expressly it is said that the shadow at that time falls longer. And therefore, the shadow itself is polluting. That was the kind of situation that we had. And at places of worship, not everybody is allowed. Now, you remember, most of you remember the kind of fight, the kind of struggle, the kind of battles that were fought. Some of you might remember that you had Vaikom Satyagraha. Vaikom Satyagraha was not about anybody and everybody entering the temple. Just not just entering the temple. It is a fight to gain the eligibility to walk on the road leading to the temple. Road leading to the temple or road around the temple. That was the condition. A huge agitation had to be carried out. Gandhiji had to come here. Narayan Guru and others were leading. That was the kind of situation. And at that time, Chavara was alive. When all these things were happening, this kind of an oppression was happening, this kind of prohibitions were in place, people were not allowed to come into educational institutions. People were not allowed to come into places of worship. They were not allowed to recite. They were not allowed to even listen to. They were not allowed even to hear. And to walk on the streets. And Chavara had seen those things. And you know what he did? This is where, I wanted to come here, say this, express myself, and stand here to express my gratitude as a conscious individual for the kind of great things that Chavara had done. This is a huge part of the battle for egalitarian society. He said, you cannot open a place of worship without a place of learning. No church without a school. That was the first principle. If you want a place of worship to be opened, you will necessarily have to open a place of learning. And everybody will have to have a free and unrestricted access to both a place of worship as well as to the place of learning. That was the first condition. Wasn't that a revolutionary? Because all around him, let us not beat around the bush. Let us not, say things softly. Let us call a spade a spade. The entire society around him was trying to limit, restrict access to both places of worship and to places of learning. And not just restriction of access. If you transgressed those restrictions, severe penalties followed. Severe penalties, unspeakable penalties followed. The other day, Father, I read somewhere, I saw a video, I must share this with you, that somebody was saying very nicely that the Shastras were so sublime, so great they are, that if you had fever, you can recite a particular stotra and the fever will come down. And this was mentioned in one of the ancient medical texts of this country. That is what somebody is saying. And he gave an example. He gave an example of one very great saint had fever once, and then his Sishyas said, "Can we call the doctor?" Then the saint said, "Don't call the doctor, call the children from the Patashala. Let them come and recite a particular stotra for 38 times, or 40 times, or 42 times, or whatever." So when they were reciting, first recitation is over, second was over, third was over, then slowly the temperature started falling. After 10th, it fell. After 20th, it fell even further. By 38th or 40 or whatever, the entire fever vanished. And this prescription was there in ancient texts. This is what the person was saying in his lecture. And that is the power of these ancient scriptures and stotrams and mantrams and all that. It's very difficult for me to dispute that. Maybe it is true, I do not know. It's a matter for the scientists to decide whether a particular sound vibration, a particular mantra, a particular word, if it is recited in so many number of times, in that particular order, maybe it might have an effect or not. That is for the scientists to decide. It's not for you and me to decide. But my fundamental question is, who is allowed to recite those stotrams and mantrams? Who are allowed to listen to those stotrams and mantrams? Is it universal? Can anybody and everybody do that? Can they recite? Can they hear? Can they listen? That was not to be. That is the kind of society in which Chavara was born. Chavara saw it around him, in his environment. So the question is not about the mantra, not about the stotra, but isn't there a practice? If somebody who is not supposed to listen to it, is it not a fact that his ears were filled with molten lead? Is it not a fact that people who are otherwise not supposed to recite, if they recited, as Dr. Ambedkar had said, that their tongues were cut off? Is it not a fact? That is the kind of social background. That is the kind of society. That was the kind of social order against which Chavara, Gandhiji, and many others fought, and Ambedkar fought, and all that. But, at a time when this was the situation, he ventured and said, look, we need to have education. Start schools. Bring everybody into the school without restriction. Every other school in the society, in the town, in the village, was restricted only to some people born in some castes. And more so, only the males of that caste. Only males of that family. Females were not allowed. Females going to school was considered as leading them into loose morals. That was the thing. And something was happening here. In somewhere around the same time, something was happening in Bengal, something was happening in Maharashtra. For instance, Jyotirao Phule was doing it in Maharashtra around the same time, 1846, 1847, 1848. This was the time. And Chavara also started a Sanskrit school. A Sanskrit school which gave access to everybody irrespective of caste. But, where do you find a Sanskrit teacher? Who will teach? to everybody. They won't. Anyway, I was told that, Chavara Achan somewhere, he found a half insane Brahmin who could come and teach. Half mad, it seems. He caught hold of somebody in Thrissur, brought him. I do not know how long he stayed. Maybe he ran away. We do not know. And the school, as you might expect, did not run for very long. But he did. He fought. I mean, he did not fight in the sense of he was not trying to, shout. He was not trying to give slogans. He was not trying to, organize processions. He was not trying to, build a movement. But he was in his own way. He was revolting against this kind of injustice. He was revolting against this kind of inequality. That's what he was doing. And then you have a girls' school. You have a printing press. Because printing press was something that democratizes knowledge. Without press, without a book, it's not possible at all to democratize knowledge, to democratize education, to give access to education. He did that in a small way. It wasn't easy for him because he just wanted to have a look at what kind of a model it is. How do we start a press? What is a press? He did not have access to presses. So somewhere he found an access. He took some kind of a carpenter along with him and he saw them and they came back and then made a model. Out of what? Out of banana. What do you call that? Banana stem. And for a long time that press was called a banana stem press. That was the kind of, what strikes me here is this is a revolt. A quiet revolt. Not a loud shouting revolt. It is not a political revolt. It is a social revolt. It was trying to strike at the roots of inequality in this society. That's it. That is the miracle. That is the greatness. So, a school, a place of learning, and a place of worship. Then, in order for people to have access, a press, in order to encourage people to come to the school, Uchakanji. A midday meal when? In 1850s, 1860s. People did not think about it then. Even today, governments in the Republic of India, state governments think that, they are doing a huge revolutionary act by saying that we are giving midday meal. It happened in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, some other place and some other place, maybe in Kerala also. Today people are talking about it, but this was initiated by Chavara Achan sometime in the mid-19th century. Almost more than 150 years ago, nearly 200 years ago. That was the kind of, so that, people come, because they come from poorer backgrounds, they're deprived backgrounds. They have to come and they can study, they can focus on what is being taught there only if they are not hungry. When they come, they are fed. That is the thing which is, addressing two things at one time. That is giving education, giving access to education and giving access to food. Two things. So place of worship, place of learning. Then democratization of knowledge and learning by the printing press. Attempting to bring Sanskrit to everybody, irrespective of caste, irrespective of birth. That is another one. Then, larger collective social participation in the welfare of the community by collecting a fistful of rice every day. or every 2 days, or every 3 days, whatever is your capacity. Don't think that you can feed the entire society. Just give one fistful of rice, one fistful of food grains. That is the only thing he wanted. If he had gone to some rich people, probably they would have given him money. They would have given him grains, bags and bags of grains. He could have, fed people. No. He wanted each and every one in the society to be a part of it, to own the effort. Therefore, social change, the effort to change the society is democratized. Everybody is a part of it. They were made a part of it. This is what Chavara tried to do. Now, when we come now, today, he wanted to build a place, build a monastery, build a church, build a place of worship, build a place of learning, build a place for an activity. He was looking around and he found this hill is good. But then he came to know that, people who are there, they considered that as a sacred place of a particular goddess. Oh, then let's not disturb that. Then he went elsewhere. Almost plans were ready to build there. So that is the kind of thing I think today Indian society has to learn. In the sense, today people are looking underneath every place of worship, under every hotel, under every building, and say that, look, under this, there was something else before. So let us demolish that, build that. And under that, there was something else. Somebody else will come tomorrow. But Chavara said, they thought that it was a sacred place for them. Leave that. Find something somewhere else. Go away. Don't try and say, look, I want to build. Wahi banana hai. No. Build only there. No. Respect. Go away somewhere. You do your activity. Acceptance, tolerance, diversity, democracy. No exploitation, no oppression, no inequality, no discrimination. Access to everybody. Learning, place of worship, printing, Sanskrit, food. Everything is thrown open in a small way. That is, people used to say, people tell us, wise people say, what do you need to dispel darkness? This room full of darkness. What do you need? You just need one light. That's it. It's gone. So Chavara was in 1813, 1840, 1850, 1860, 1870. He was trying to light that small thing. And when he was doing this, when he was taking this, today you can understand what kind of a magnitude that fight was. It's not a small fight. While doing that, hand in hand, he was contributing immensely to Malayalam literature. Can you believe this? You ask people, are you ready? I have no time. To read, there is no time. To read newspapers also, we don't have time. This man was doing all this and also writing, not just writing. He was giving a new direction to Malayalam language, Malayalam literature, Malayalam genre of poetry, of drama, of biography, of autobiography. These were the new things way back in the early 19th century, mid-19th century. That was Chavara. it is a wonder that somebody as important as that, somebody as revolutionary as that, in word, in deed, and in thought. As we say, manasa, vacha, karmana. All the three. In all the three, it is a phenomenal revolution. Is not known throughout the country as much as he deserves to be known, or he deserved to be known and respected, celebrated. That is why I thought I should come here, because I am a fascinated student of how societies thrive on inequality, how societies manage to keep a small percentage of their population thriving and a large percentage of people under their thumb. It's fascinating. It is not possible unless you convince the large percentage of people that they deserve to be dominated, they deserve to be discriminated against, they deserve to be oppressed. There is an acceptance. Yes. He's a big man. He's of that caste. I'm only here. Unless you somewhere in your mind do not give consent to being oppressed, to being dominated, to being discriminated against, discrimination, domination, oppression is not possible. And there are different techniques to do that. And in this society, whatever may people say today, but I will tell you something. We talked about the place of learning. Let me come to the place of worship. We talked about place of worship, where people are not allowed even to enter the roads leading to a place of worship. That is the fifth one, the untouchable, whose even shadow will pollute you. But what about people who are not so polluting? What happens to them? And how is the graded inequality built into the system? I'll tell you how it is built. It's interesting. It fascinates me. It fascinates me because it's so clever. Even today you struggle to get out of it. Even today it is so difficult because there are people who come and tell you it is the great thing. We have to go back. There are today people who are trying to tell us, we have to go back to 200 years, 300 years, 500 years, 600 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years. We were great. But what was it? What was it that made the entire thing possible? This is it. You see, the first in the hierarchy can go and stand near the God. He can touch the God also. Nothing happens. And the next one can be 10 feet away from the God. Follow this carefully. And the third one can be maybe 12 feet away. In the fourth one, there are many different people, so-called different castes. So those people of them, some people can stand at 15 feet, some people 17, some people 19, some people 21, some people 23. Now, the trick is this. The 23 feet fellow, whom is he grudging? Not the person who is touching the god. 23 feet fellow is grudging the 21 feet fellow. And the 21 feet fellow will try and put the fellow at 23. He'll say, why are you coming here? No, your place is 23. Why are you coming at 21? And 21 fellow will be grudging the 19 feet fellow. And 19 feet fellow will tell the 21 feet fellow, don't come here. I am 19, you are 21. You stand there. So the fight is between 23 and 21 and 21, 19, 19 and 17, 17 and 15. Not between these and the 1 and 2 and 3. So that is the graded inequality, that is the graded discrimination which does the trick. Now, the system is even deeper than that. If you behave properly, from 23, if you don't come to 21 and violate all these things, then in next janma, you can go to 23, 21. And from 21, in another janma, you can go to 19. From 19, another janma, if you behave properly, you can go to 17. That is the hope. Not in this janma, next janma. We don't know whether this is one or not. But that is the kind of graded inequality, graded discrimination that keeps the entire structure in place. And it is this complex, complicated structure that people like Jyotirao Phule, Ambedkar, and much before that, Chavara wanted to strike it and bring equality, bring access. That is why we are celebrating Chavara. Thank you very much.